Dan Illman, Matt Bernier, race number 9 at Santa Anita on Saturday is the Grade 2 San Pasqual Stakes. You can play this race with a DRF Bets account. Sign up at bets.drf.com. Deposit $50. Bet with $200. DRF Bets. Ready, set, bet. Here's the field for the Grade 2 San Pasqual. It's race number 9 at the Great Race Place, and we expect this track to be wet. The horse to beat, Matt, is the number 7 McKenzie. There's no doubt about that. He was sparkling in both the Pennsylvania Derby and the Malibu, and he was just stuck on a very fast pace when disappointing in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Does the presence of a wet track worry you with McKenzie, especially at a short price?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have a short price, you've got to worry about something that they've never encountered before, and he's never run on a wet track in the past. Maybe you and I will disagree on this. To me, if we're just looking at it from a talent standpoint, there's no question who the most talented horse in the race is. It's him. I don't know about the 1 1/8, to be honest. I think he's probably better slightly shorter. In the wet track, you have to be a little bit concerned about it. I don't know that I'd be running to the windows to bet him at 2 to 5. But at the same time, if it's just strictly, if everything works out and he can handle the wet track in the 1 1/8, I know he won that Pennsylvania Derby at it. I think just from a talent standpoint, I think he's the most talented horse.
I agree that he's the most talented horse, and you might even still have a little bit of upside. Heck, this is going to be only his first start as a 4-year-old, and his Malibu is sparkling. I mean, he didn't really break very well that day. Took a little bobble coming out of it, ended up with a 4-5 wide trip, and just rolled by them late in the stretch. He looked fantastic that day. You know, Baffert's always been high on this horse. It's a shame he missed the Classics with various illnesses and injuries, but McKenzie is the horse to beat. He's going to have to deal with a wet track. Baffert has another horse in this race, however, and we know the other Baffert angle seems to work in Southern California. The number 3 Dabster is expected to make the pace in the San Pasqual, as we see from our Timeform U.S. pace projector. And while I think Dabster's a very nice horse, I think he wants 1.25 miles or maybe even more. And I think if this pace projector is right, McKenzie fans are salivating at the chance to go after Dabster, not to be rude, turning into the stretch.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, if this is how this whole thing plays out, I take your chances every day, and that's not meant to be a knock against Dabster, but I feel like you kind of know what Dabster is. He's a nice horse. He's going to give you a high 90. Heck, he's registered 3 consecutive 99 buyers, so you kind of know where you're living. Distance isn't going to be an issue for him. I just do wonder about the quality. He clearly, you hate to say it, but it's just plain and simple. He's not as good as Battle of Midway. We've seen that on 2 different occasions. And now you got to deal with, again, another really talented horse, at least 1, if not 2 or 3 more. I just don't see a scenario where he gets it done, unless there's a crazy speed-friendly track.
Man, I agree with you 100%, because in the last 2 races, Dabster has had his chances against Battle of Midway. He went right after Battle of Midway in the Native Diver. Battle of Midway was able to outfinish him. I was a little surprised, because I thought the 1 1/8 gave Dabster an edge. Cutting back to 1 1/16, he had the length of the stretch to go by Battle of Midway, even after both of them were passed by Giftbox, and he just couldn't do it. It just seems Battle of Midway has his number right now. Getting to Battle of Midway, it looks like this horse hasn't really missed a beat. We remember he was retired after winning the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile at the end of 2017. The stud career didn't work out, and while it took a couple of races to get back on track, this horse has come back in good shape. He likes a wet track, and he's got some sneaky speed too.
He doesn't have to come from nearly as far back, I think, as a lot of people just assume that he did. And like you say, each of these past 2, he has been right up there and forwardly placed. So I think that goes a long way. Also nice to know that he has a victory over a wet track, so you can kind of, those fears are allayed a little bit. Maybe I've been harsh on this horse in the past. Outside of that Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, I've never been wowed by anything he's really done. And I'm not totally convinced that this horse is really... Is he really in the top 5 or 10 as far as older horses are concerned? Maybe now he is without City of Light and Accelerate, but at the end of the day, if he's the second choice, I would much rather have the shorter price in McKenzie, who I think is a better horse.
And I know he beat Dabster at this distance and ran really well in the Kentucky Derby as a 3-year-old, but like McKenzie, I kind of like him at slightly shorter distances. He obviously has proven he can win at this trip. The number 2 Dalmore just couldn't get there in the Sunshine Millions Classic last time out. I thought he ran really well. He made 2 moves that day, but this is a really big step up in class from Super Tappet to McKenzie.
Yeah, it certainly is. I guess the good news, if you're a fan of this horse, and I picked him second in here, just taking a shot with a big price, he loves Santa Anita. This is the track that he has done his best work at. All of his victories lifetime have come here. It's a little bit of a concern that he's 0 for 4 on a wet track, but he has run decent races in the past. He has tactical ability. I don't think he's going to be up there pushing the pace. I won't be surprised if he hits the board at a big number.
Wet track is exactly what the Calumet folks are hoping for the number 6 Sonneteer. He is 1 for 17 lifetime on dirt. He's 0 for 13 on fast dirt. He wants a wet track. He wants a big pace. I don't think either one of those situations are impossible. The question is quality. Is he this good?
Yeah, I don't think he is. I mean, a career best fig of 96, that's not going to be good enough to get the job done in here. Maybe good enough to get a small award, but I mean, that at the end of the day has been this horse's career. 9 times second or third from 22 lifetime starts with only 2 wins. I don't think he's good enough.
Giant Expectations is dirtied up coming into this race. He ran into City of Light in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Nobody was beating the subsequent Pegasus World Cup winner. He was in against Seeking the Soul off an extremely long layoff in the ACAC as his prep for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. I thought he ran really well that day. Then he was taking on Accelerate and Gun Runner. You know the drill. This horse has good tactical speed. He likes a wet track, but I do think a 1 1/8 is just a little bit too far. I think he's a miler.
Agreed. I think he's a one-turn variety as well. I would rather see him even at 7/8 of a mile. And I do wonder, you got to wait and see what the calendar looks like. And it's no bargain, obviously, shipping cross-country. But there's a part of me that like to see a decent effort here. And then I don't know when they're running the Gulfstream Park Mile down there at Gulfstream, but I'd love to see him in an opportunity like that where, again, one-turn mile. And at that point, then you start mapping things out, whether it's at Churchill Downs, whether it's up at Belmont or somewhere else.
Shiva Mitimbish moves turf to dirt for Jerry Hollendorfer. His big races have come at Del Mar in his career. This is a horse that just looks a little bit overmatched. They're taking a shot.
Taking a shot. I don't think he fits in here. I think he's a decent little horse, though. He's that kind of horse that you run him in a listed stake or something like that, he can figure. In here, he's up against it.
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Grade 2 San Pasqual. McKenzie is way the horse to beat. The wet track and the 1 1/8 worry me enough that I want to give another chance to our good old friend Pavel, who won the Stephen Foster at this 1 1/8 distance way back in June, then took on Accelerate in both the Pacific Classic and the Breeders' Cup Classic. And in the Breeders' Cup Classic, Matt, I'm interested in your take. He looked like he was moving pretty sweetly at about the 3/8 pole. He got steadied 2-3 times on the turn, and then basically the race was over. He didn't kick as much as I had hoped in the stretch. I'm throwing out the Japanese race. It's so tough to ship in Japan with those quarantine rules. I think Pavel has a chance in this race with some pace. He likes a 1 1/8. He's a hard hitter that runs well at Saratoga. He might not have the figs or the name cachet as McKenzie, but he's solid. 8-1 is a fair price, I think.
Yeah, you know what? I can't argue with that. And this is a horse that admittedly I've gone the opposite direction on. I loved him early on, and he's lost me. There's a part of me that looks at it and says, I know he has a win at Santa Anita, but I think he does his best running away from Santa Anita, whether it is at Del Mar, whether it's clearly at Churchill Downs. It looks like he really enjoys that track when he won the Stephen Foster. And then he did put in that bid before all hell broke loose for him in the Classic. I don't know where I stand with this horse. He's never run on a wet track before, but the good news is, if you do have those questions about McKenzie and Battle of Midway, and you don't love Dabster, you're looking at a Grade 1 winner last year who's 8 or 10-1 in a spot like this. I'm not going to talk anyone off of it. If you like him in this spot, this is where you're going to get some value. And guess what? Because if he runs well here, his next start, he's going to be a fraction of the price. So this is the opportunity, if you like him, to take a chance.
And you can make the argument he was best in this race when the beaten favorite behind Accelerate last year, when he was just stuck behind a complete wall of horses and had to alter course around 5 others in mid-stretch, a day when the rail seemed very, very good and Accelerate rode it. I think Pavel's a little dirtied up. He's a nice horse. You stab, I got to use McKenzie everywhere else. I'm going 1, 7, 8, and 3. Give me numbers.
Yeah, it's 7, 2, 8, and 3. This is a race that I don't have much interest in betting. I'm very curious to see how McKenzie handles a wet track and additional going out to a 1 1/8. Again, at the end of the day, I think he's far and away the most talented.
A win here might set McKenzie on course for the Santa Anita Handicap. It's race number 9 at the Great Race Place on what we expect to be a rather wet and dreary Saturday, but you can still play the card with a DRF Bets account. Sign up at bets.drf.com, deposit $50, bet with $200, and approximate post time for McKenzie in the San Pasqual is 4:23 Pacific. Good luck.